Our next topic from Chapter 6 is Section 306 stock. This is a scenario that was once used to get earnings and profits out of a corporation without having it taxed as a dividend. The corporation issues non-taxable stock dividend in the form of non-voting preferred stock. Because you want to keep control of your corporation. You don't want to give up voting control. Shareholders then sell the preferred stock to a third party, and after some time has passed, the third party sells the stock back to the corporation. The maneuver was referred to as a preferred stock bailout. It was very popular in Hollywood in the 1940s. Of course, back then, one of the things was you did not have a special lower tax rate for dividends. So dividends were just taxed like ordinary income. So that was one of the things that changed the temptation to try to bail out stock without calling it a dividend. So that's been changed, but the Section 306 is still on the books, even though the temptation to bail out earnings and profits is less than it was back when this scheme was invented. So here's a preferred stock bailout. Individual A owns 100% of X corporation, and it's worth $2 million. And A's basis in the stock is $1 million. The corporation has $500,000 of excess cash, so should probably be declaring a dividend. And there's $1 million in accumulated earnings and profits. So, of course, that would be dividend income to individual A, who doesn't want a dividend. So, this corporation issues 100 shares of non-voting preferred stock worth $500,000 to A. So now the common stock has a fair market value of $1.5 million. The preferred stock has the other $500,000. So it's still, the corporation's equity is still worth $2 million. The basis of the common stock, we're going to divide up that basis in proportion to the fair market value. $750,000 for the common, $250,000 for the preferred, for a total $1 million in basis. Step 4, individual A sells the preferred stock to B for $500,000. That is its value. Amount realized $500,000, basis $250,000, long-term capital gain $250,000. And then some months later, B sells the preferred stock back to X corporation. The result of the bailout is A gets $500,000 out of the corporation, $250,000 long-term capital gain instead of $500,000 of dividend income. Even today, a stockholder would prefer that, even though they're taxed at the same rates nowadays. Imagine back in the 40s when dividend income could be taxed as high as 70, 80, 90%. So it took Congress a long time to figure out what are we going to do with these preferred stock bailouts. The initial stock dividend, the Supreme Court has said a stock dividend is not income, cannot be taxed. So that's out. The redemption of B stock is only modest income to B, and A is not even a party to the transaction. So B probably is going to redeem the stock for slightly more than it paid for it. That's how you get B to participate in the transaction. But that's just a little bit of compensation. And it's just that amount of modest income that's going to be taxed. And A is still getting out of the deal with a much lower tax than would otherwise happen. So the only thing that can be attacked by Congress is the sale from A to B. And that's where they finally decided they had to hit it. Section 306, stock is defined as stock other than common, like preferred, received in a non-taxable stock dividend, or received in a tax-free reorganization. See Chapter 7 for that. That has the same effect as a stock dividend. So we will talk about tax-free reorganizations in Chapter 7. For now, just keep in mind that that exists, and anything that would be like a stock dividend is going to be treated same as a non-taxable stock dividend. Or received in exchange for other Section 306 stock. So you can't cleanse the stock of its Section 306 character by swapping it out for some other stock. No, if it's 306, anything you swap it for is also going to be 306. Or received in a Section 351 transfer that would have been a dividend if it had been received as money. So anytime you try to convert a dividend into some other form of stock, it's going to be called Section 306 stock. So they pretty much think they thought of every way to turn preferred stock into a dividend. So they said, if you get preferred stock, we're going to call that Section 306 stock, and any stock rights or warrants on the stock that you receive from them, same deal. It does exclude stock issued by a corporation with no E&P. Hey, if you've got no earnings and profits, we don't care what you do with your common or preferred stock, because you're not going to get any dividends from that corporation anyway. So I've got this stock, and Congress has labeled it Section 306 stock. What does that mean? If I sell it at any time, I immediately recognize ordinary income taxed as a dividend on the lowest of the proceeds from the sale, the fair market value of the 306 stock when I received it, or the earnings and profits of the corporation when I received the Section 306 stock. So the lowest of those three, that is taxable to me as a dividend. Don't care anything about amount realized minus basis. If I have any remaining proceeds, I will use that to reduce the basis of my Section 306 stock. And the remaining basis of the 306 stock, if I've sold it all, will be transferred back to the common. So I don't lose my basis, but if I sell off all the 306 stock, I can't subtract that basis except to the extent that I use up E&P. No loss will be recognized on the sale of Section 306 stock. All they're going to do is treat as much of the proceeds as they can as a dividend, and then any basis that remains after that, they will just transfer that back to your common stock. No reduction in earnings and profits, even though they've taxed your income like a dividend. The one thing that it differs from a dividend is that at least the dividend reduces earnings and profits. Sale of Section 306 stock does not reduce corporate earnings and profits. So not only are you no better off than you were before, you're actually a little worse off. You've got dividend income without at least being able to reduce your earnings and profits. If the stock is redeemed, so you sell it back to the corporation, then the redemption proceeds are a dividend up to E&P at the time of the redemption. So they're just going to say, well, that's just a dividend. So it'd be like you never had the stock and they just paid you out that dividend. Section 306 rules do not apply if the shareholder disposes of the entire interest in the corporation, common and preferred. You got nowhere to put that basis. If you completely sell out of the corporation, then they'll say, okay, you're out of the corporation. You're not bailing out earnings and profits. You're just selling off your share of your interest in the corporation. If the stock is redeemed in a Section 302(b)(4) partial liquidation, we just saw that in the last video, then 306 rules do not apply. Or a complete liquidation, which we will see in the next video, then also the 306 rules do not apply. 306 rules do not apply also if you can show that the transfer of your preferred stock did not have tax avoidance as a principal purpose. Doesn't have to be the principal purpose. Say, no, I was doing it for estate tax purposes or something, or some other reason. Doesn't matter. Tax avoidance could be a purpose in order to trigger 306. But if it is not even a purpose, if you can show that, no, I really wasn't going to be saving any taxes with this anyway, then you can avoid Section 306. Or if the stock is received from a decedent. Death washes a lot of things clean, and this is one of them. If you get Section 306 stock because you inherited it, the 306 feature of the stock goes away. That's about the only way you can transfer stock without the 306 either being triggered with your transfer or following to the transferee. So if you give the stock away as a gift, then the recipient of the gift is going to have 306 stock on their hands. Thank you very much for that lovely gift. But if you die and they inherit it, then that would get rid of it. Let's take a look at problem number 53. Ramon and Sophie are the sole shareholders of Gull Corporation. Ramon and Sophie each have a basis of $100,000 in their 2,000 shares of Gull common stock. When its earnings and profits was $700,000, Gull Corporation issued a preferred stock dividend on the common shares of Ramon and Sophie, giving each 1,000 shares of preferred stock with a par value of $100 per share. At the time of the stock dividend, fair market value of one share of common was $150, and the fair market value of one share of preferred stock was $75. Letter A, what are the tax consequences of the distribution to Ramon and Sophie? So they had common stock of 200,000 shares, fair market value 300,000 each. 1,000 shares of preferred stock had a fair market value of 75,000. That's 375,000 fair market value for each of Ramon and Sophie. The basis of the stock, 100,000 altogether, originally just in the common shares. Now it's divided between the common and the preferred. That's 80% to the common and 20% to the preferred. The distribution is not taxable, so that is the answer to letter A. Preferred stock is, however, Section 306 stock. What are the tax consequences to Ramon if he later sells his preferred stock to Anthony, an outsider who didn't own any of the stock before? Anthony is not related to Ramon, and he sells it to him for fair market value of $75,000. So sale proceeds, $75,000. Fair market value of shares when received was $75,000. Earnings and profits when the shares were received is $700,000. Ramon has income of $75,000, which is the lower of sale proceeds, fair market value, and earnings and profits. Okay, $75,000. That is going to be taxed like a dividend. So we can at least use qualified dividend rates. And the basis of the common is going to go back to $100,000. He's going to add that $20,000 back to his common shares, so it's back to $100,000 where it was before the preferred stock distribution happened. Letter C, what are the tax consequences if instead Ramon, why are we picking on Ramon all the time? I don't know. Anyway, Ramon selling the preferred stock to Anthony, Gull Corporation redeems the stock from Ramon for $75,000. Assume that Gull's E&P at the time of the redemption is $650,000. So redemption proceeds, $75,000. E&P when shares were redeemed, $650,000. Ramon still has dividend income of $75,000, and the basis of the common goes back to $100,000. We're trying not to call this a dividend by sending out the preferred stock, but as soon as you redeem the preferred stock or sell the preferred stock, you have the dividend income anyway. We will at least be able to reduce earnings and profit down to $575,000 when we do the redemption as opposed to a sale. When he did the sale in letter B, E&P stayed the same. Here, we do get to reduce earnings and profits by the amount of the dividend. And that is it. Much shorter video. The long one was the stock redemptions that we did first. But we have 2 more to go, and the next one will be on complete liquidations.